and welcome to Live Up to Freedom. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you're all staying safe and staying sane. As promised, the rest of this week, I will continue doing interviews that are very important for you to know about. Today, we do have a very special guest with us that I don't necessarily have a personal connection to, but I do have a bias toward, and I will tell you why that is. With us today, we have David Shestokas, who's running for Illinois Attorney General. Important position, and we will discuss why that is. Hi, David. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello, Annie. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely a pleasure. Let me tell my audience why, even though we don't have a personal connection. Well, we do. We are both Christian followers of Christ, so that I consider that a personal connection. But what I meant by being biased is my story started in Illinois, Chicago. When I came to America about 20 years ago, that's where I landed. That's where all my paperwork started from. And before we started the show today, I was telling you how much when I look back, I don't recognize Illinois anymore. From inflation, the city itself, crime, how blue it has turned. So can we start there? I know you're born and raised Illinois. How much does it look different to you?
Oh, as you say, Annie, I was born and raised in Illinois. I was born here in 1952, so I grew up in the 50s and 60s here, and it was a wonderful, wonderful place to be. We had a wonderful situation. My family, we were beer wholesalers. We used to distribute beer on the southwest side of Chicago. Companies that were started by my grandfather. Actually, that brings fond memories because I actually delivered my first case of beer when I was 5 years old. Because my dad would take me on the weekends when he would do picnics, and it was also a safe place. Mom would let us out of the house, and then if something went wrong, the neighbors would tell the mom. Everybody kept eyes on each other's kids and stuff. So it was a tremendous place to grow up here on the south side of Chicago. But of recent vintage, there's been just a horrible situation where we've got prosecutors that don't prosecute, and that certainly is demoralizing for the police, who put their lives on the line to even make even the smallest arrest as dangerous for them, let alone the serious arrests, and then to have the people like Kim Foxx in Cook County and Eric Reinhart in Lake County just decline to prosecute on crazy things like mutual combat that they're saying that they have. I was a prosecutor. I was a prosecutor for Cook County back when we actually prosecuted crimes. When we actually would prosecute crimes, prove cases beyond a reasonable doubt, and have people receive appropriate penalties for those kinds of things. And it was a much safer, less dangerous place than it is today. Nobody feels safe. Fox has this rule. There's a felony rule in Illinois that if you steal something from a store at $300 or more, it's a class 4 felony, up to with 1 to 3 years in prison, possibly. Fox has come up with their own rule that says, well, if it's under $1,000, we're not going to prosecute it. And that just, of course, makes business impossible to run. It makes the inside of the business unsafe because regular customers have to deal with people that are going around filling up garbage bags with stuff until they get to $999. So it's an incredible mess that's been foisted upon us, and that's just the issues in the Chicago area. But in the last year, of course, we've had these terrible circumstances with the governor exceeding his authority and locking down the state in circumstances where he had no authority to do that. And one of the things that has me involved in running for Attorney General, it's actually the attorney. People don't understand this, and maybe we'll get to this in a moment. But the Attorney General is not responsible to the governor or the government. He's elected by the people. But in the last few years, the Attorney General has acted as if he was the governor's personal attorney, protecting the governor from all the accusations of his illegal activities. And when things run right, that doesn't happen. So it's a very sad circumstance, and that's compounded upon any number of rules and regulations that have decimated the small businesses downstate. There's so many towns that look like ghost towns that used to be thriving communities So it's a huge problem. Not just the violence in Chicago, but the economic devastation across the state.
Yeah. Well, we will get there, because I can't believe how many people don't actually tangibly understand the importance. It's like the only important election is presidential race and Congress and Senate. Like, no. Every little, you go from the very small one of your school district all the way to the White House. They're all connected one way or another, and we will get there. But let me ask you this. I love your slogan, by the way, is make crimes illegal again. Is it true that Chicago, or Illinois, I don't know, I think it's Illinois, that's kind of sort of on top three high level of crimes in America, isn't it?
Absolutely. No, Chicago is one of the tops, and I believe of recent days, it's among the Chicago may be the top murder place in the country on a per capita basis. There may be more murders per capita in Chicago. They run. They don't even pay attention. You know, they run the shootings and the murders in the city almost like a sports box score. You know, this week 48 people shot and 17 died. You know, and that's the count for the week, and it just receives short shrift, and it's just a shame when people get all upset about all these. And that's not to say that they shouldn't, but essentially there's the equivalent of a mass murder in Chicago every day. And this is problematic, and it's because they are not prosecuting people. And it's that, you know, every time these things happen, they say, let's have more serious gun laws. All we have to do is enforce the law. Nobody is enforcing the law. And that's the very first place to start before you start complaining about what new laws we need. There's plenty of law around, but we don't necessarily have either the political will or the inclination to enforce them. Or in the situation with Ms. Fox, who's the state's attorney in Cook County, $400,000 of her funding for her last campaign came from George Soros, who Mr. Soros is certainly not interested in having a safe and secure United States of America.
Oh, no, it's Soros and everyone who is affiliated with Soros mentality, because there's George Soros and then there's the Soros mentality when it comes to people in America. They are looking for chaos. The more chaos, the more control they can have. So yeah, I don't believe for a second Soros or anyone Soros support would ever care to enforce the law so we can go back to where the country was safe. And by the way, I'm not saying it's 100% safe, but you all know there was a day when America was safe. America was the safest place. But let me ask you this, since you brought it up. We all already know where the Democrat Party stands. Pretty clear. Or at least those who matter, we know. But from what I've heard in your race, on your end, on the Republican Party, on the GOP, there's a bit of a corruption going on from what I hear. Is there?
Well, let's put it this way. There's a fellow that's running for governor here in Illinois that's gotten $54 million for his campaign from a well-known Illinois billionaire that has contributed $54 million to one of the governor candidates. One of my opponents is on the same slate with the governor candidates being bought by the $54 million from the other billionaire. On the other, I have two primary opponents. There's the one that's on the slate with the billionaire funding, and then there's the other fellow who has any number of shall we say ethical challenges. There's been circumstances where he's been recently had the police.
I'm sorry. Are we talking about Tom Devora?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Let's make sure. If you don't mind, I would like to introduce this person by name. Okay. Because from what I hear, Tom Devora shall not, under no circumstances, be elected. This man has so much problems in so many levels that goes against our Constitution, against our Judeo-Christian values, against our American lifestyle, that him being elected as a Republican could possibly take the Republican image of this entire country even lower than it is right now. Am I over exaggerating on that statement?
I think not. I think not at all. And there's a number of things regarding Mr. Devora that have been that they're all public record too. None of them are secret. It's quite public that in fact he's in the midst of having an affair with a married woman who at one time was his law client. He asserts that she's not now, but at one time she was his law client, and while she was his client, it appears as though his law partner filed for her divorce, which is still ongoing, which was not complete. And of recent times, in April 20th, they had some sort of altercation, if you will. She and Mr. Devora and his married girlfriend, to the extent that, in fact, the police were called in Springfield, Illinois. There's video out about from police body cams of the police interaction with he and his girlfriend, and it's really embarrassing. Actually, when the police ultimately came to his hotel room door, he answered the door in his underwear, utilizing had his shirt on called Grifter Nation. That is just. No, there's very real probability that if he were to be the nominee, they would probably run a commercial against every Republican in the state showing Tom Devora in his underwear. That's just the tip of the iceberg. He has this record of suing school teachers who said things about him that he didn't like. He's got a record of suing the governor for not on any kind of government issue, but actually because the governor said that Mr. Devora was a grifter. He didn't like that the governor called him names, and now he filed a lawsuit, and strangely enough, he's suing the mother of his girlfriend. Apparently she said things he didn't like about her, and he chose to name as what they call respondents in the lawsuit, me, myself, my sister, and another candidate for United States Senate, fellow by the name of Bobby Payton, saying without any basis whatsoever that we did something to help the mom say bad things about him. Is it just a disaster waiting to happen?
Okay, so just to make sure I understood this correctly, Mr. Devora himself is married.
No,
but he's not.
No,
okay,
he's
but
divorced.
he is having an affair with a woman who was married at some point.
She is married.
Oh, she's still married.
She's still married.
Wonderful. Wow. That is, I'm going to say this to our audience. These are the times that I say we need to not be hypocrites. If Devora was a Democrat candidate, we would have been wearing shirts about this affair as Christians. Let's do the same thing about Tom Devora. It doesn't matter which party he's running under. We cannot have people with such lack of values to represent us. As Americans, as Christians, this is a no-go. Now, back to you, David. So based on the lawsuits, safe to say Mr. Devora is anti-First Amendment, because apparently anybody who says anything that offend him, he goes for a lawsuit?
That appears to be the case, Annie. It appears to be the case that if somebody says something about him he doesn't like, he drags them into court.
Oh, wow.
And of course, the law on that subject is if you're a public figure and you're engaged in a public discourse, it's very, very difficult to prove a lawsuit against you for saying something that even if it's untrue, you have to prove. You have a very high bar and hurdle to say that in protection of the First Amendment. And so that does not seem to be an issue for him. And so he drags people into court for a variety of frivolous reasons. But the other interesting thing about that is that at least in any number of people have indicated that there are investigations by the Bar Association, by the people from the bar that regulate lawyers into the issues regarding his affair, because it is an absolute prohibition to have an affair with a client. And the public record indicates that they entered an attorney-client relation somewhere in April or May of 2020. There's actually news stories about that. And then there's other indications that they started dating not long after that. And so he said it appears as though there's a risk of him losing his law license in the midst of him running to be the Attorney General of the state of Illinois. That's And there's many, and the list goes on and on and on. It's just a tremendous thing. I don't normally talk about it much, only primarily because you asked. But it is not good. And I suspect that there's a real belief that were he to be the nominee, that they would try and paint every Republican in the state, because it is a statewide office, and they would try to paint every Republican in the state with Tom Devora. And so it runs the risk of, in a situation where there's a potential for a red wave, to throw that all out the window with this gentleman on the ticket.
Well, to be honest, the reason I'm asking, David, is a while ago, I started saying this, and I decided to start acting on it, is the fact that our side, let's say conservative, Republican, Christian side, we have developed this habit of not digging dirt on the bad candidates. This is why we have more than half of the Republican representatives as rhinos out there who are not representing us, who are selling out, who are literally joining the leftists, basically helping destroy this country, because we want to be nice, because we don't want to talk bad about, fellow Republican candidates. We got to stop that. If there is a bad apple in the basket, we all gotta have to point it out, or we didn't do our job, our duty as Americans, to inform the public who are going to vote. And believe it or not, sadly, most of the votes in this country take place based on two things: endorsements, media information. Most Americans don't go do their own homework or their own research. So as an investigative journalist, I feel like it's my job to bring all the information to my audience, at least, so they know who they're dealing with. I don't know who this man has been endorsed by. I do know, and I want to mention this, if anyone looks him up, in a very indirect way, this Tom Devora guy is taking advantage of one case that he has worked with a very great man, a good man of God, Mr. Bailey, who is running in Illinois, I believe, for governor. Tom Devora is taking advantage of that one case that he worked with Mr. Bailey. And I want to make it very clear. This is in no shape or form credit or discredit to Mr. Bailey. David, if you want to add something to this, because I know you also are familiar with Mr. Bailey, but Tom Devora cannot go up on the ladder using fake information such as, oh, we're buddies with Bailey because I worked one case with him.
Yeah, that's an accurate statement about his at least a legal relationship with Mr. Bailey. For some reason or other, it seems that he's got an ongoing political relationship with Mr. Bailey. They campaigned together. Mr. Bailey's doing a bus tour around the state of Illinois at this very second. And from what I understand, Mr. Devora has been at any number of the bus stops. And so they're actually campaigning together. And even though there's this cloud, this ethical cloud hanging over Mr. Devora, but for whatever reason, that doesn't seem to bother Mr. Bailey. And so that seems a little bit troubling in that regard as well. So, but those are the circumstances, Annie. I think perhaps, and that's the background on that. I don't normally do that. I spend more time about the office of the Attorney General, what that job is supposed to be, because most people don't understand what that job is, primarily because when they hear the term Attorney General, they think of the United States Attorney General. And the United States Attorney General is a completely different animal. The United States Attorney General is, in fact, appointed by and serves at the pleasure of the President of the United States. And so consequently, if the Attorney General of the United States and the President disagree, the Attorney General has two options. One is to go along with what the President wants, or if he disagrees strongly enough, to resign his office. That's the whole situation. State Attorney Generals are completely different in that regard because they are elected by the people. In at least 43 states, they're elected directly by the people. Specifically here in Illinois, they're elected by the people. And consequently, they don't owe a duty to the governor, the government, the various agencies of government. They owe a duty to the people and to justice. And I've been doing rather well trying to explain to people that that's what what that job is supposed to be, how it's designed by the Illinois Constitution. There's also something called the Illinois Attorney General Act that, in fact, outlines 15 duties. And the very first duty says, the first duty shall be to represent the people of the state, not the governor, not the government, not the Department of Public Health, et cetera, et cetera. So people are starting to understand that. And they're also starting to understand that if I were the Attorney General, that's precisely what I would do. I've got a lawsuit right now against I'm representing an organization called the Illinois Conservative Union against the Illinois Board of Elections. And all we're asking the Board of Elections to do is comply with federal law to provide the data for my clients to be able to determine if the Board of Elections is doing its job. And all we're saying in that lawsuit is obey the law. And the Attorney General is defending the Board of Elections, saying, you know, we don't have to obey the law. You literally have the Attorney General of the state of Illinois telling citizens of the state of Illinois that their government doesn't have to obey the law. This is also problematic. And if we were to have somebody who's campaigning closely, if one of the Republicans who is associated closely with governor candidates were elected, I think we'd have the same situation. And so that's kind of a problem, I think. It's not healthy for the state.
Well, I would agree, absolutely. And okay, let's go back quickly to your, I call it platform, but I have 3 questions for you. I'll ask, you answer them however you like. Where do you stand with election integrity of this country?
Well, as a prelude to that, in 2016, I was part of the Trump-Rubio team in Florida. And in Broward County, Florida, I wound up discovering 150,000 illegally open ballots in the back room that were open behind closed doors with a lock on them. In 2020, I was part of the president's team in Pennsylvania. I ultimately I spent a good chunk of the time in Allegheny County, which is Pittsburgh. But then I wound up going to court with Mayor Giuliani in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. And then I ultimately testified before the Pennsylvania Senate regarding what happened in Allegheny County. In Georgia, for the Senate runoff elections, I actually did some work with some Dominion machines, and we did a variety of monitoring there. And I also was a consultant to the Arizona House of Representatives during the course of the audit. The audit was being conducted by the Arizona Senate, but the Arizona House was interested in what their constitutional authority was, depending on what the outcome of the Senate investigation was. I was lucky enough to spend a little time with Dinesh D'Souza a couple of weeks ago, and but I had to sheepishly admit to Dinesh that I have not seen 2,000 Mules. But I said, Dinesh, on the other hand, I said, I don't have to see 2,000 Mules. I was on the ground. I saw votes that were coming from condemned buildings that they had their permits pulled to not be demolished. We saw probably 300,000 ballots come into a warehouse in Allegheny County that came in already opened. So we don't know what happened to these envelopes, the mail-in ballots, the envelopes that came into the room where we were supposedly observing. And the closest we were was about 30, 40 feet away from the closest place they were processing. But what we did observe is when they showed up in the room for us to observe, the ballot envelopes were already open. We have no idea what happened to them before they came into the room. That was among the things I was going to testify to in court in Williamsport, but the judge dismissed the case without hearing any evidence. So I think I have enough information to say election integrity is a huge problem, and we're doing that. We've got some great things going on here in Illinois with spearheaded by an organization called the Illinois Freedom Alliance, where they've got poll watchers scheduled for next week, and some that are already doing things under early voting. The people that we're working with are utilizing my lessons from 2020 and the lessons that other people have from 2020 to try and make sure the best we can that 2022 is as best as possible. But there are huge problems. And I would also mention that I mentioned the Illinois Attorney General Act. Actually, there's, as I mentioned, there's 15 duties, but among the top 5 is that and I don't know the last time anybody did that here, but we will, in fact, do what's necessary to ensure the integrity of Illinois elections, should I be fortunate enough to navigate the maze that's an election this year.
Wonderful. So here's the next question. On your website, you have mentioned that you are a protector of our Constitution. Can you elaborate on that?
People ask me about what my feelings are on the Constitution, and I basically tell them, go read my book. I wrote a book about the Constitution. Actually, the book grew out of a show that I did out of Southwest Florida. I was on the air for about 4 years doing a show called Constitutionally Speaking, and I had a variety of constitutional experts, some folks with cases pending before the United States Supreme Court, some other folks that were candidates for Congress and whatnot. And then that ultimately led to my writing the book Constitutional Soundbites. And then strangely enough, when I got done with the book about the Constitution, I found that there was 140 references in the book about the Constitution to the Declaration of Independence. And I wound up writing a book about the Declaration of Independence. And frankly, it's really a terrible, terrible thing that we do not teach the Declaration of Independence, because if you do not understand the Declaration of Independence, it's very, very difficult to comprehend exactly the Constitution. It's interesting. The Declaration of Independence is the inspiration, and the Constitution is the execution. Because when people they take an oath, and when you became a citizen, you took an oath, to support, defend the Constitution of the United States. But the truth is the Constitution is a mechanical document. It gives the president 4 years. It gives the Supreme Court, lifetime achievements or lifetime tenure, and a variety of technical ways in which they pass bills. But the real reason, and the reason that people die for the United States of America, when they say they support the Constitution, it's because of this paragraph from the Declaration of Independence. It's because we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Those are the things that people die for. Those are the things that make the country what it is. And in the end, the most important, there's many important phrases there, but in the end, it says the consent of the governed, which means elections. Okay, if we don't have elections and we don't have the elections go well, we don't have anything. And so that's why elections become so crucial, because they're the bedrock principle of the founding of the country.
Amen. Wonderful. What is the name of your book?
The book about the Constitution is called Constitutional Soundbites. And the book about the Declaration of Independence is called Creating the Declaration of Independence. They're two very different books. One has 150. The Constitution book has 150 questions and answers that answers things from the preamble, all 7 articles of the Constitution, and then the 10 amendments for the Bill of Rights. But the Creating the Declaration of Independence is a story that follows John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and Richard Henry Lee in the month before the Declaration is issued, and the kinds of things that went into the writing of the Declaration of Independence, the kinds of things that Jefferson considered, and the actual danger that these men were in. Nobody actually all these guys were having trouble declaring independence, because as soon as one of them said independence in public, they were committing treason against the king. And the penalty for treason was really, really serious, and ultimately wound up with having your head cut off. And and it's not like it didn't happen. There's a fellow by the name of Dr. Joseph Warren, who is actually John Adams' personal physician, who in the aftermath of the Battle of Bunker Hill, which was in the summer of 1775, but in the aftermath of Bunker Hill, Dr. Warren's head was cut off. So they actually knew people who had their heads cut off. And when they went forward with this, they fully well knew what kind of dangers they were in. And this is something that we don't teach our children. We don't teach our new immigrants. We don't teach each other. And it's just horrible, because that is the essence of what America is, and it's the essence of why people, in fact, die for. It's the principles they die for.
Agreed. Unfortunately, we are out of time. We gotta run. David, tell my audience your website, where they go, what did they do to support and help?
Sure, absolutely. The campaign website is Dave4ag.com. Dave, the number 4ag.com. There you can find out more about the campaign, and you can also find out how to contribute and donate to this, because it does have national implications. If I'm in charge of election matters, I will be in charge of election matters for the state of Illinois in 2024. And that puts Illinois in play in the presidential election. And I would suggest that, and so my election has national implications, and I hope people will watch it. I hope they'll contribute so we can bring this message about making crime illegal again in Illinois, and hopefully spread that across the country.
Wonderful. David, thank you so much for doing what you do. Thank you for standing up for our freedoms and Constitution. We will be praying for you for guidance, for clear vision of what it takes for you to stand up even further. And we will hope and we will pray that you will be victorious in, I think, next week. Primary.
June 28th is when the election is here. So yeah, if anybody in the audience has a friend in Illinois, call them up and tell them to, or if you're here, obviously vote for me. But if you just got friends, I'm sure your audience is large enough that you guys could probably elect me all by yourselves.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, David, again, for giving us your time. Hopefully we bring you back for some more updates.
Look forward to it, Annie. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you guys for staying with me until now. As always, I appreciate you. Please do stay safe and stay vigilant. God bless you and God bless America. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
You're watching Lindell TV.